Back in November at a CETA committee, I asked Bruno Tertras, the Deputy Director of the French Foundation for Strategic Research, if it happened that Western support to Ukraine were to enable them to actually try to retake Crimea. I asked him, did he think it would increase the risk of the use of a nuclear weapon? And he says, yes, I think it would, he says, but I don't think that should deter us from making that happen. So in other words, he was saying that risking the use of the nuclear weapon was going to be worth it. I'm wondering what you would think of that. The New York Times has just reported that the US is warming to the idea of helping Ukraine to target Crimea, while stating that the Biden administration does not even believe that Ukraine can take Crimea militarily. James Action at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace argues that the risks of Putin using nuclear weapons would go up significantly if he thought Crimea was under threat. And I'm just wondering, given what's happening and the dangers and the fire we're playing with, I mean, do you think that given that there's been so little efforts at diplomacy and dialogue from the Europeans, I wonder, do you think that we should be engaging more in that space?
Your question about the nuclear weapons and all this, I am aware of all these things that you cited. I would say one thing, because as DG, perhaps with a beer afterwards, I could speculate with you, but as DG, I wouldn't like to speculate, but one thing I can say, and this is the fact that in the course of the war, the talk of nuclear weapons has become more or less routine. We used to have a certain, I would say, exclusion zone when it came to talking about usage, nuclear weapon usage, active usage. It was like an ultima ratio, as we would say in Latin, that was, of course, like a no-go zone, with the exception maybe of the DPRK, but any other country. So now there is this talk. I was referring now to this episode that we had back in October on the dirty bombs, when they said, well, if there is a dirty bomb, maybe there is a rationale for use of nuclear weapons or tactical weapons. So I see this trend as quite alarming, the banalization, the normalization of the talk of nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons, which wouldn't be so bad, wouldn't it? So, I mean, this thing is really quite alarming, and I think here is where I rejoin you in being very, very concerned about that.